So it is a real pleasure, and I do mean this, to be here because I value placemaking, and the two of you have done an unbelievable job in placemaking at this university. And to celebrate that in such an extraordinary way today by bringing this fantastic collection of speakers, I've learned a lot. I know you've learned a lot. I've been inspired. You have too. So it's been a really great day. And Mr. President, I need a copy of your remarks from this morning. They were lovely. So, all right, so Ian, where's Ian? Ian, I must not have been paying attention when you assigned me this topic of innovative placemaking, because I thought, I don't want to talk about innovative placemaking. I'm not sure we should be doing innovative placemaking, but I do think we should think more innovatively about the power of place. And that's what I want to spend some time on tonight. So Ian, I've kind of taken your topic and I've tweaked it a little bit, but here we go. And the reason I want to talk about this, and we've been talking about it really, I guess, all day in different ways, is that research shows that place, done right, can be an accelerator, a really important accelerator of the things that matter to the success of cities, which is what I'm obsessed by. What are those things? I think there are three: talent, opportunity, and engagement. Why talent? The president just said it. Because if you define success as per capita income in cities, then the percentage of college-educated people explain in a city's population explain 58% of that city's success. Okay? So if anything explains 58% of your success, you go, okay, guess I need to make that my first priority. And I think that's one of the reasons it is so important. It's so right that we would be having this conversation under the auspices of a university, because that's what delivers the talent to our communities. Why opportunity? So I said talent, opportunity. Why opportunity? Because the American dream is fundamentally rooted in the idea that no matter the circumstances of your birth, you can move up in life. It's in our DNA. It's what brings strivers from all over the world to this great country. Why engagement? Because we live in a democracy that depends on voters, and voting depends on engagement. And besides, and Tom, where's Tom? I'm going to take a little issue with you, Tom. I always do. We spar all the time. We've been sparring for many years. I don't think you can. When I started in this business, you could gather a few of the right people in any room and sort of figure out what the future looked like. I don't think you can do that anymore. I think today, future of the city is crowdsourced. It's what thousands of people decide to do every day, and the hundreds of actions they take every day that essentially creates the future of a city. Candy, you said, where's Candy? I saw her. There you are. You said the future of a city is a reflection of who gets involved. I thought that was a great line, and that to me perfectly describes what it is I'm talking about. So I think the key question is, if talent, opportunity, and engagement are key ingredients to the success of cities, I think the question for us in this room is, how can place be an effective accelerator of those three characteristics? So let's talk first about place. 2/3 of the most mobile Americans, you know who the most mobile Americans are. They're college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds. The longer you live, the more connections you make in a community, the more ties you have, less likely you are to move. So 25 to 34-year-old, college-educated, those are the most mobile Americans. 2/3 of them say first they look for the city they want to live in, then they look for a job. Think about that. 64% of the people that cities most want to attract, the people like those on this campus who will come off this campus with a degree, say they choose place over a job. So if your city doesn't have the appeal that those people are looking for, they keep looking. Now, what kinds of places are they looking for? Well, that was the subject of today, the kinds of places that Chuck, that Gil, that Jeff, that Vince all talked about. based on the behavior of college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds. Today, they are seeking dense, walkable, bikeable, kinds of places, mixed use, that are diverse. And if you look at what they're doing, where they're really moving in America, it's very interesting. In 1980, 10% of those people, young adults, were more likely, young adults were 10% more likely than other Americans to live within a 3-mile radius of the central business district or downtown. Today, they are 110% more likely than other Americans to live within that 3-mile radius. And so you think about the 3-mile radius, which is the core city of any American city. What is it? It's an older neighborhood. It's got the street grid in place. It's connected. It's generally walkable, bikeable, denser, mixed use, mixed income, etc. So those are the kinds of, so this is not people saying in a survey, this is what they want. This is actually what they're doing and where they're moving. And I think that's worth paying attention to, because that is a dramatic shift that's occurred over the last 30, 40 years. And what's happened is you look at it, and every single decade, it has continued to increase, and now it's sort of, going off the charts. And I don't see anything to stop it. So I think it's fair to say that quality of place, the things that you're working on so hard here, writ large, now stand, I think it stands, I don't want to say quite as an equal to education, but the fact is, if you do the expensive part of the job here at University of Oklahoma, and those kids go elsewhere, then you've done the expensive part of the job. You did the hard part, but they moved on because they couldn't find the place they wanted to live. So I think it's really important to look at the investments in talent development. We also have to be making commensurate investments in attraction and retention, and that comes right back to place. So the effect of place on talent, place as an accelerator of talent, I think is very clear, very compelling. How place accelerates opportunity is not nearly as obvious, but I think it's fascinating, it's critical, and it's a subject of intense interest to us at Knight. Let me tell you why. The research coming out of Raj Chetty's team at Harvard suggests that one of the key ingredients to intergenerational economic mobility, the ability of people to be born in one zip code and move into a higher income zip code, depends in large part on whether that person is living in close proximity to people with more income, right? So, simple way to put that is rich people, poor people, or people with more money, people with less money, living in close proximity creates necessary opportunity for people to move up. Now, that is a place play, if I've ever heard one. If you think about why that is, I think it's pretty obvious, because as bad as poverty is, it's not as bad as concentrated poverty, right? Concentrated poverty makes everything about poverty worse, right? Fewer jobs, fewer networks, fewer role models, poorer schools, the whole 9 yards. So concentrated poverty is a real problem. And I think that's a new and urgent placemaking challenge for us in America. How do we get people of different incomes to live in close proximity to one another so that they share more of the public realm on a daily basis? They see each other on a daily basis. It's not happening today. In fact, we did a 40-year look. We did a 40-year look at poverty at a census tract level, and we looked at the 1,100 or so, about 1,100 census tracts that were high poverty in 1970. You know how many of those switched from high poverty to below average poverty in 40 years? 100. 100. In fact, there are now 3,000 plus census tracts with high poverty. So we're moving in the wrong direction, which is why this is such an interesting question, and I would say an urgent question for placemaking. Because we can't compel rich people and poor people to live near each other. We can't compel rich people and poor people to send their kids to the same schools. We tried that in the 60s, didn't really work. So I think maybe the real question is, how do we make it delightful for people of different incomes to live near one another? How do we make it an obvious value add for people to live in shared public space together? I propose next time you have a conference, I think that ought to be the question. Because if we could crack that problem, it really unlocks a lot of opportunity for people in America. And again, we're beginning to explore that at night, and we're really interested in having partners that want to explore it with us. And so that brings me finally to engagement, and this question of how can place be an accelerator of engagement. Knight Foundation was founded, it's the legacy of Clara Knight and her sons, Jack and Jim Knight, who owned a chain of newspapers around the country. And the foundation is built on the belief that informed and engaged communities are fundamental to a strong democracy. And as befits their legacy, we spend a lot of time and make a lot of grants in service to engagement and trying to understand what that really means. So, how many of you have participated in a public engagement process? Okay, all the masochists in the room have just raised their hands. Thank you very much. I think the experience of participating in a public engagement process probably tells you a lot about what engagement is not. And yet, a lot of these citizen engagement processes, you know this better than I do, you're architects and planners, they've been codified into law, right? So, there's the 3-minute requisite public comment period in every public meeting. Every architect, every planner has to have the public engagement expert on the team. Apps developers have had a field day, mostly with Knight money, trying to develop an app around engagement for the smartphone. Yet, and this is important, yet the rate of voting in local elections continues to plummet in America. We just completed a set of focus groups with millennials around the country. And these were people who vote in national elections but do not vote. They fall off, they drop off, and do not vote in local elections. And it was really clear that they don't see voting in local elections as a way to express their values, and they don't see local government as a way to get things done. Now, in a democracy, that's sort of troubling, right? So we're, and it's especially troubling, I should say, because if the future of cities or our communities is crowdsourced, and I believe it is, then, what we believe about the future and how we act on those beliefs, in fact, creates the future. So if you don't believe that local government is important, it's not an instrument for you, it doesn't reflect your values, you opt out, then again, it doesn't take long to make that a real problem. And we're about at an average of 24% in voting in local elections. Problem. And that's of registered voters. So at Knight, we're exploring how cities can create a robust culture of engagement. Specifically, we're exploring how places can be designed and operated and programmed to encourage more robust engagement. Gil, you and I were talking about that this evening. We believe that the places we inhabit every day can be a far more powerful way to stimulate a culture of engagement than any process or any app. I had a really interesting conversation recently. I had this rare opportunity. I was asked to come meet with the founders of modern-day Portland, Oregon. And it was so interesting talking to those guys because they essentially said, you know, what we realized about our community is there was a very small group of decision makers, and they all met in the basement of this downtown hotel, kind of made decisions, you know, behind closed doors. And we decided that if we were ever going to change that, we had to drag people out of their living rooms to live life in public. And it was only by living their lives in public that they would be in ongoing conversation with their neighbors, and I mean neighbors writ large, again, strangers, who are in fact neighbors, about the future of their city. And that was the first, I think that was the first time I really understood what citizen engagement could be or should be, that was the potential. And that somehow we've made it small. We've made it very small by forcing it into a process or forcing it into certainly an app. And I think it's another reason why the work you're doing and you're supporting and really championing is so important, because I think in a lot of ways being in public with one another in a comfortable way, even a delightful way, is fundamental, I think, to democracy. And it's something we're really trying to understand at night. And certainly we don't have all the answers. I'm not sure we have any answers yet. We have maybe a glimmer of insight here and there. But we're engaged right now in two initiatives that I thought I'd just tell you very quickly about that are trying to play this out, this notion of place as an accelerator of talent opportunity engagement. We have two initiatives that we hope will help us learn new ways to use place to, at the same time, to accelerate all three of those things. I want to tell you about them. The first is something we call public life, public space. Our primary investments to date have been in 880 cities, which you all got a chance to hear Gil at lunch. He's magnificent. And 880 cities is doing really fantastic work. We made an investment, a large investment, just recently in Gale Institute, which is a spinoff. It's the spinoff from Gale Studio, which, I'm sure most of the people in this room know Jan Gale and his work in transforming streets and plazas and sidewalks all over the world and cities all over the world into public space where pedestrians are first. And that we're actually working specifically with their institute around research on how public space can encourage two things: economic integration, if you will, getting strangers of different, can space attract people of different incomes and then get them to interact, which is, who knows, I don't know. That's a big lift, but we'll see. And can space encourage robust civic engagement? They're already doing some research that I think is very interesting on the plazas that were developed in New York under Jeanette Sadiq Khan. Gil talked a lot about that. There were a lot of photographs of their work in his presentation earlier today. And many of the cities that Gil has worked in now show up on the best cities in the world list. So they're doing something right. And we've also invested in Theaster Gates. I don't know if you know Theaster's work. He's an artist working on the south side of Chicago under the auspices of the University of Chicago. And Theaster's using art and artistic program to transform the most unlikely places in disinvested neighborhoods into compelling attractors of people from all over the city. So he's doing something very special there. We're testing a hypothesis that in its simplest form goes like this: providing people with appealing ways to live life in public, to be, if you will, in the company of strangers, comfortably, even delightfully, will result in more engagement with others and more stewardship in communities. And if communities can create that kind of public life, the result will be places that attract and retain talent and create more opportunity for all. It's a really simple proposition. Make it fun, make it easy for people to get out of their living rooms, live more of their lives in public, with neighbors. It's the way historically communities were built. Chuck made that point this morning. Gil made that point as well. And you know, Gil, you talked about urgency, and others did as well. I connect this back to this return of young people to cities, and being, by the way, quickly followed by their, you know, their aging parents. This is interesting because you think, okay, so we're at this moment that we haven't had for 50 years where cities are beginning to come back. And can we use this moment? Can we use this moment to create momentum around public space and turn the tide on this bifurcation or this separation, this segregation that we've allowed ourselves to fall into for many of the reasons, again, you heard today. So that's I think if we miss this moment, we're going to miss an opportunity that may not come around again. So I feel some urgency about it, and it's exciting to be working on that with Knight. The other initiative, just the only other initiative I want to mention in relationship to this, again, place as an accelerator. Can it be an accelerator intentionally? Tom, using your word now, intentionally be an accelerator, talent, opportunity, and engagement, is something we call reimagining the civic commons, and this is my baby project. Think about all the civic assets you have in your community: parks, libraries, recreation centers, pools, vacant school buildings, school playgrounds, all of those things that exist in every one of our communities. They were the original democratizing spaces in America, right? You entered into those spaces, you were equal. You didn't pay to get there. When you entered, you were a citizen just like the next person. But if you think about what's happened to these assets, particularly in neighborhoods, sometimes you've got the glamour assets in downtowns, but if you look at what's happened to most of those neighborhood assets, you know, a lot of them, they're old, they're out of date, they're misaligned with today's consumer interests, they're disconnected from one another, they're siloed, you know, in the same way most of City Hall is siloed, right? And if we're all honest, most of our organizations are siloed. Worse, they're too often serving niche audiences or markets or groups of citizens, abandoning their original potential to be these democratizing, equal opportunity community institutions. So here we have this, in every community, I would say, a set of underperforming civic assets, rich in possibility, but very low on the priority list of most mayors. So Knight is asking, what would happen if we reimagine these civic assets as a civic commons? Can they be used to create new value, new opportunity, new magnetism for cities, including in our most disinvested neighborhoods? Can we stir the public imagination in this new civic commons such that it becomes a new priority for our cities? I think it's a really juicy set of questions, and we're just diving into it now. Last Monday, we announced an $11.5 million investment with the William Penn Foundation in Philadelphia, where we have a collaboration of leaders of 5 of these types of neighborhood assets, all that are sitting. It's interesting, each one of these 5 assets that we've invested in sit on the seams intentionally on the seams between neighborhoods with more income and more disinvested neighborhoods, because we really want to test this proposition of, can we reanimate these places as democratizing organizations? And we're layering that up with investments in technology. We're conducting research. We're trying to figure out how they can plan, manage, market, innovate, learn together to create new value for their communities. And just to say, we're looking for a couple more demonstration sites. So if anyone knows a couple of demonstration sites, let me know. So clearly our investment in these 2 initiatives, public life, public space, and reimagining the civic commons, are bets on the idea that being intentional about place can pay big, big dividends for communities and to the people who inhabit them. That's why I think this conversation today was so rich, so important. It reinforced the value of place and our opportunity to make our investments in place work so much harder. I look forward to what we will achieve for our communities through more imaginative and more innovative placemaking. Thanks.